Hello everyone, and this is Naushad Anjum and of Crew Resource Management or CRM, a subject that I've been teaching 14 years. And this crew resource management trainings that I do maybe can be utilized for people not as a replacement to a regulated training, but it will give the crew resource management basics and some advanced concepts that I normally do. So today we are going to start our first session of crew resource management. When civil aviation grew after World War II exponentially, then of course the machines, they started to become more and more advanced. They started to become more and more complicated also. And we had a time when in a transport aircraft we would have at least 5 crew members there. In a normal transport aircraft, you will have a captain, you will have a co-pilot, you will have a navigator, you will have a flight engineer, and you might also have a signaller. Then slowly the signaller was removed, and also at some stage the importance of navigator was also felt not to be there. When all these modern navigational aids, it just removed the need of not only navigators, but also with the automation coming in, kicking in, the need of a flight engineer in the recent past was also thought to be removed. And that's why we have now two-man cockpit. But before we start at the two-man cockpit philosophy, let me give you some historical perspective also. You know that CRM has been attached historically with accidents like Tenerife and the accidents like Everglades. So there are many accidents which happened and which necessitated, and that there has to be some kind of more robust kind of crew resource management program in place. However, I always argue that this was all based on a lot of history of accidents. There were not only 2-3 accidents which were responsible for starting or kick-starting this program. Of course, the crash at Portland, Oregon was one of the most famous crashes as well, where the need of crew resource management was later on further felt. The important part which I want to now cover about the introduction or the history of CRM is that once we teach students about crew resource management, a lot of students keep on kind of wondering that what this word crew resource management actually entails, and how was it becoming so important that it became part of their flying curriculum, and then also as a regulatory requirement to get refreshers. The concept has to be understood in this perspective, that machines, they are based and they are designed on a logic. When a machine is made, it has rules, it has science behind it. So when humans, they drive that machine, they become an extension of that machine. Now, this extension of the machine being a human means that humans who are driving that machines have to be possessing those qualities that a machine has. For example, a machine does not forget if it is having a logic there. If it is designed to remember something, for example, an alarm clock, it will not forget. A machine behaves the way it is expected to behave in normal situation. But humans, on the other hand, they have a lot of things which make them different from the machines. And they are, first of all, they have emotions, they have memory, they have feelings, they have physiological needs. So when a pilot become an extension of a machine, that for some amount of time that pilot needs to exhibit the qualities of that machine as well. Because if he does not do that, then there is a chance that this person can mishandle the machine. For example, if that pilot is fatigued, he cannot focus on his job. For example, if that pilot is stressed, for example, if that pilot is in some kind of anger or emotional arousal because of his domestic or because of his team or because of his some own personality issues. So it all entails onto a lot of list, but one important factor that I'm going to talk about today is called focus. Now, when I say focus, it means remaining here and now once you're flying an aeroplane. And crew resource management, most modules ultimately lead us to this thing, that how much are we able to focus on the here and now, and if we are able to do that at first stage, then how are we trained to develop a picture what is going to happen next, which we call situational awareness, that how it's going to end up in near future, how we project our present, and are we able to connect the dots or not. Crew resource management had a very basic element when it was introduced, was that it meant that there was not only one person in the cockpit. Now, this is that part of crew resource management which is generally and literally most commonly known. I will definitely touch upon it, but at the same time, let me share this with you, that for today, our concerns may be much different than this concern. We'll come to that in some later lectures, in some later parts, that how these concerns are different once we talk about the advanced crew resource management. But it will be unfair if I do not talk about this aspect of crew resource management, that we want people who are lower in their authority gradient in the team. We saw that a lot of accidents happened because they could not speak up their concern. They saw that there are things happening wrong. A captain is doing something wrong, he's taking a wrong decision, but still they did not speak up. Like in the crash of Tenerife, we found out that the first officer knew that they did not have the takeoff clearance, and the aircraft started to roll, but he could not take over the controls and reject the takeoff. And it is called destructive obedience, and how it literally caused a crash which is called the mother of all accidents. We have to understand that only by stating this thing, that we have to be assertive as juniors or as low ranks in the chain of command in a team, just by saying it will not happen unless we understand the human psychology behind it, that why people behave in this very way, what are those factors which make people go in the back seat and they are unable to be assertive. One of the major things that companies in the CRM realm really have understood, that CRM is actually top down. It cannot be only or effectively taught, that you keep teaching it to the lower levels of command, of chain of command. But if the top command is not convinced, more so if they do not apply it in their normal day-to-day operations, then the CRM will just lose its essence. Rather, there will be a lot of resentment which can result into this kind of CRM training, because once you go and talk to a team or an organization about CRM which has a hierarchy, which is not convinced about CRM, and it is just nothing else other than lip service, then they become more resented towards this concept, and it can create a negative training to those individuals as well. Now, as I mentioned, that humans are extension of a machine, and they have a problem with their focus when it comes to emotions. The first thing that we lose is our focus, is that whenever we go into stress. Now, we have seen that in an emergency or critical emergency situations, there are people who were very good in their otherwise handling of emergency situations when these situations were given to them during a test on ground or during an emergency session, which is a normal routine daily briefing, or they were given a test in a simulator. They behaved all right, but when it came to an actual, when I talk about simulator, I mean when any of the emergency was asked verbally, and they were told to just narrate either the memory items or refer to the QRH or refer to the FCOM. So they did an amazing job because they had very good amount of knowledge as far as this emergency was concerned. Same way in the military side or the Air Force side, people have daily morning briefings where they discuss one or two emergencies, and they do amazing work there. Why does it happen then that when the actual day comes or when the actual emergency comes, people are unable to really perform? And one of the explanations here, and definitely in the advanced CRM, what we call, it's called emotional regulation, that how we handle our emotions. Now, one of the basic reason people are unable to perform is that their stress exposure training is either inadequate or it's not there at all. When I say stress exposure, it means that memory, whatever we remember, is in the prefrontal cortex of our brain. And whatever we have learned is nice and easy when it comes to us while our blood pressure and our heart rate and our breathing rate is a normal realm or normal regimen. But when it comes to an emergency situation, definitely our fight and flight response kicks in. And that is the time that our physiological changes in body coming from sympathetic nervous system, coming from our HPA axis in our brain, and of course with various neurotransmitters and hormonal secretions in the body, one of the things that we literally lose is our ability to retrieve from our memory. And this inability to retrieve from our memory is basically because of the partial blocking of our cognitive strengths, or our, when I say cognitive strengths, I mean how we make sense of the world in our brain. Now, the crew resource management trainings need to emphasize that people are trained well enough about the knowledge that how stress is going to affect their performance. So while people may judge themselves with an excellent amount of knowledge on ground, in an actual emergency situation, the ball game will be totally different depending upon that how much stress exposure was given to that gentleman. Let me here use this luxury of being on both sides of military and civil flying, that what we can literally learn amazingly from civil flying for the military flying is that one of the basic aims of simulator trainings is that it gives you that immense amount of resource where you can not only practice emergencies in the real-time situation, but you have a complete set of crew there, like your first officer or co-pilot, and you have your task sharing practiced. Now, I want to clarify one misconception which I literally found in a lot of senior military supervisors, that they think that probably simulator is an exercise, or it is a tool to practice something or to see something which we may not otherwise see. Well, correct partially, that you will see, for example, in a dual engine aircraft you may see a single engine failure. In a single engine aircraft you can see that once a single engine will fail, what will happen, what kind of a Christmas tree are you expecting in your master caution panel. Yes, there are a lot of things that you can see, but trust me that there will be absolutely negligible learning or very less learning if we think that this is the aim of simulator, that we just expose people just to see what is there. No. Actually, it has to be added with the main ingredient, and that is the kind of stress that needs to be attached with the simulator training, and what kind of demand is put from that pilot who is sitting inside. A pilot, if he sits in a military simulator, thinking that it's a video game, and whether I crash or whether I survive, whether I overspeed or whether I stall, doesn't really matter, because I'm just here to see how does it look. I'm sorry, it is only going to lose your faith in the machine, and that means that you may then get the machines which are not very accurate in replicating the actual machines. Why I want to say that you have to attach some kind of a stress to the simulator is, let me give you an example. There was a time when I was working for another foreign air force in their academy as a fighter flying instructor. And we had a great chance to work on the simulators, on the military simulators of the fighters, and we found out that they had a pass-fail ratio equal to a normal flight mission which was attached to that simulator. And this kind of attachment and importance given to that simulator, we saw that people were more stressed about their simulator flight or mission than they were actually stressed for a normal flight in the aircraft. Why? Because they knew that the challenges will be immense, and how they are going to handle that stress. So this is another discussion, but I just want to emphasize here that the amount of simulator training or the spirit that is given is not only that we let people go through this, but the major aim is that we practice task sharing, we practice what role who will do, who will read the checklist, who will do the actions, who will handle the aircraft, who will handle the radio, at what time, what all will happen. One of the interesting achievements that crew resource management design developers have done, and their procedure designers have done, is that they have created a drill of handling an emergency whenever some caution comes. Now I am coming back to the civil airline pattern of crew resource management, that whenever there is a light or there is a warning, then there is a drill which starts. Let me here share something else as a psychologist, that what are the benefits of that drill. When I say a drill, it means there are some call outs, it means that there are some actions, it means that there are some very mechanical steps that are supposed to be taken. So I relate it to CRM in this way, that when something happens, like a master caution, like a master warning, then like any other emergency, the startle effect starts to kick in. So there is a lot of change in heartbeat, there is a lot of change which happens to the eyeball movement, and every person has different response to stress, but definitely raising of heartbeat, raising of breathing rate, and the very quick shift of eyeballs is common in most cases of stress or startle. Now in this way, again the cognitive blocking kicks in, and there we make two types of decisions. One is called the natural decision making, which is the first one. And then after 10 seconds, 15 seconds or 20 seconds, depending on the personality of the individual, depending upon how that person is trained, depending on how that person was selected and recruited, depending on the psychometric tests that were done, that were overall. So it's a complete package of that person sitting there. So it will depend on how long is the natural decision making time. Now natural decision making time is that time when we would request crew to do nothing, because its example of this is that if you are sitting in a room or in your lounge, and suddenly you see a snake, or there are 3-4 people sitting there, they see a snake together, then everybody will have a different reaction watching that snake, on spotting the snake. People may run away, some may scream, some may just jump on the sofa, some may start to pick up something heavy and throw towards the snake. It can be a whole lot of combination of things over there. So that's why we don't want people to make their own independent decisions while handling an aircraft, which is very critical and critically attached to a human mind, and we wanted that mind to behave in a way which is more logical. So these initial 10 seconds at least are the time when we don't want people to do anything. And this drill, for example, a master caution comes and you say, okay, master warning, Suppose we have hydraulic 1 failure, and this is a complete drill where one person says, I have control communication, the other one says ECAM actions, or whatever is the policy for your airline. So these initial 10 seconds, they are not only crucial because we want people to know what has happened, they're also very crucial to understand that this is the time that we are actually passing the first 10 seconds doing nothing. And it helps us in two ways. We very quickly take our own posts that who has to do what, and also it then helps us to calm down because we have passed that 10 or 15 seconds of startle time, and that is the time that we can start off with our actions and then the other CRM tools that definitely will come later in our lectures. The last thing about introduction to CRM is that CRM is not a learning tool only. It's a tool which helps us to first understand, educate ourselves about something, about our own self, that how we behave with other people, how we behave with teams, how we handle stress, and how we handle anxiety or emotions. It tells us about it, and that is something we learn. But once we see that people, what they learn in the class, they don't apply in the aircraft, it means that there is a gap. And why is that gap? Because something is blocking their learning. And that something is again part of the previous learning, or it is part of their personality, or it is part of a training which was not taken properly, or it is part of their genes. Now, if it is a part of their training or their genes and it is blocking it, it means that in some way CRM training is a training of unlearning. I say again, CRM is a training of unlearning. Unlearning those parts of our personality which come in our way when we actually want to apply them. For example, a person says that I'm being more angry to people nowadays, I can feel it. So now what I will do, I will not be as much angry, I'll try to calm down. So he gets some training or some sessions maybe, and those sessions maybe they were inadequate or they were not done properly, or he did not take sessions, he just did a self-training and he said, okay, this is what I will do. When he reaches home, again someday something happens and he just blasts out. It means that there is something which is still there in his personality which is blocking the way of that learning to come when he really needs it. Now, this unlearning will only happen if we learn the ability to look inwards and find out that what in our personality needs to be changed. An interesting part is that few of those things may be that we might have thought previously as our strength, but it turns out that maybe they are our weakness, or they were our weakness at that very moment. So one of the trainings that we will get is how to look inside ourselves and how to find faults in ourselves and how to literally try to throw them out. It is just like a wardrobe. If your wardrobe is full of old clothes, there is no room for new clothes unless you build up the courage to throw them out, the old ones, the old paradigms, and fit in the new ones. Why it is important? Because the modern pilot is going to work with very young generation, very young people on the right side. And today we see in our clinical practice that even fathers, they don't know their sons as well. So how can we actually expect that two different generations who are sitting side by side will be able to understand each other well? So this gap in communication, in understanding what makes you stress, you may not expect this young boy to be stressed as much by the same thing. And on the opposite, what you may think is nothing to be worried about might put this person in a lot of stress, because we have given them a lifestyle and then we expect them something different. Now, to conclude this very part, I'll use an analogy to explain my previous argument about the generation gap. Imagine if a youngster today who's getting married early 20s. And his wedding is being planned. The task is given to his granddad. What will happen? Well, we don't know. We haven't yet tried, but of course, nothing that young lad might like. Similarly, CRM training is a training of behaviors. And behaviors, they change with technology. People who had never watched a television were a different species. If I bring my granddad today in this world, he'll go crazy. All right? So the things have progressed in last 50 years. For example, from year 1901 till 1950, with a gradual slope, technology changed, so the generation gaps spanned over decades. Then when TV came, this television, beautiful television, yeah. So what happened? If you look at a city from the top, before television, you will find that everybody is in their houses, sitting there together, yeah. Because humans were designed to be together, social animal. That's why children will not walk a whole year, because nature wanted them to be dependent and to learn attachment with their mothers and then father and their sisters and then their area where they live and then country, and spans out. So there was a lot of togetherness in the core, but when television came, it divided people in their homes and they started their movement across each other's, it kind of reduced. And then this house was further divided when we had VCRs or VDRs, the elders and the children, and the time spending together reduced further. And then came the time of personal computer, where the house was further divided into individuals. Now, the society was now disintegrating, and today in these WhatsApp groups, we don't know what we are because our personality is divided in so many shapes that we really don't know which one is true. So what I mean to say that technology shapes behaviors. So the generation gaps which previously depended and flew over the wings of technology had decades to change or shift. But over recent 20 or 30 years, 20 years more so, the technology has spiked up exponentially. So the generation gap has now spanning over decades. It is maybe over months. Every 6 months you find a new course graduating, you find a new course joining, and you find that how different they are. Now I believe that generation gap depends more on the socializing apps and how you interact. So a person who has only used Skype, and when you can tell that this person has only used Skype and this person is a TikTok generation. No offense with the science and technology, not at all. How we handle it, it's a fact. So expecting, I come back to the granddad analogy, that expecting a marriage to be arranged by a granddad for this youngster is not fair. Similarly, CRM training, it evolved about 50 years ago or more than that. And now we are still doing it, almost the same. And is it fair to this young chap? Is it fair to us also, this generation, or an even older generation? Probably not, because one of the vital link is missing in this training, and that is the component where we assume a lot of things from our young generation. What they like, what they don't like, what makes them angry, what doesn't make them angry, how they should anger emotions, how they should control their emotions, how they should control their ability to forgive and forget, and ability to be careful and ability to be careless. We have so much assumptions from this generation which are not based on reality, because we have not been communicating to them even at our homes what to talk about in any other forum. Our CRM next sessions will be more focused on the modules, and the next module we are going to talk about will be the model of memory, that how memory affects us, and also we will talk about that how presence of other people affects our personality. So that brings us to concluding lines for this session, and that is that how we handle unlearning and learning, what is the generation gap, how we are humans as extension of machines, and we have to be emotionally resilient to be able to be part of that machine so that we don't get bewildered by what is happening around us when it comes to an emergency situation. And we also saw that what was a bit of history about CRM, which you can find also online. For me, more important thing is that how we handle CRM now, because sometimes I think relating it to the past might not serve the purpose. And inshallah, we will see you again soon with our next episode. Thank you very much.